The lights inside the space hospital were cold and white. Machines beeped in slow rhythm, each sound weaker than before. On a lonely bed lay a young woman, her skin pale, her breathing heavy. Her name was Alara, but to the doctors, she was just another patient marked as no hope. The colony's best medical team had already tried everything. Their strongest medicines, their advanced alien scanners, their robotic arms. Nothing worked. The strange infection inside her body spread faster each day, like fire racing. Through dry grass, the doctors looked at each other with tired eyes, shaking their heads. "She will not survive the night," one whispered. The others agreed, their voices low as if death was already waiting at the door. Alara heard their words, even if her eyes were half closed. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not because she feared death, but because she felt. Abandoned, the doctors, the ones who promised to protect life, had walked away. They left her alone in the silence of machines. The room smelled of metal and chemicals. The hum of the colony's power core echoed through the walls. Every sound reminded her she was still alive, for now outside the glass walls of her room, officials signed the death papers. To them, she was just a number, a record in their system. No cure existed. So why waste more resources, they said. The colony was built on survival, not mercy. If one person had to be left behind, then so be it. Cold logic ruled here, not compassion. But when all the doctors left, one figure did not. He was not dressed in white like the others. No shining badges, no glowing medical tools. Just a man in a simple engineer's uniform, his hands stained with grease. He stood at the corner, watching Alara with sharp eyes full of something the doctors lacked. Hope. This man's name was Kale. He had no medical degree, no permission to be in this room, yet he could not walk away. He had seen her before, not as a patient, but as a person. He remembered how she once helped in the colony's gardens, planting food for others, her laughter, her kindness, the way she shared water with children who had none. To him, she was not no hope. To him, she was life itself. Kale stepped closer to the bed, his boots soft against the floor. Alara's weak eyes opened, struggling to focus. Her lips moved, barely forming words. "They left me," she whispered. Kale leaned close, his voice low but strong. "I will not leave you," he said. And in that moment the promise was born. He looked at the machines around her, blinking monitors, dying power cells, broken scanners. The doctors had trusted technology, yet technology had failed. But Kale was an engineer, and, to him, machines were not just tools, they were extensions of human will. He believed machines could be made to fight for her. He believed there was always a way, if only one dared to try. The infection inside her body spread like shadow. Her heart. Monitor dipped, alarms flashed red. Guards outside the room prepared to seal her fate. But Kale's mind was already racing. Old warship parts in the scrapyard, forgotten nanotech designs, secret codes hidden in the colony's archives. He knew them all. He had built ships, repaired reactors, survived battles. If anyone could fight the impossible, it was him. He touched her hand, warm yet fragile. "Hold on," he whispered. "I will fight for you." Alara tried to speak, but no sound came. Still a single tear rolled down, as if her soul was saying thank you. Then Kale made his choice. He slipped away from the room, unseen by the guards. Every step heavy, every breath filled with fire. The doctors had given up. But he had not. The colony's leader signed her death sentence. But he was writing a new one, a sentence of survival. That night, the stars outside the colony burned bright against the black sky, and deep inside the metal walls, a lone engineer prepared to challenge death itself. The doctors believed Alara's story had ended, but Kale knew it was only the beginning, a beginning that would shake the colony, test humanity, and prove that sometimes one human heart could change everything. The colony slept under the silence of metal skies. Engines hummed in the distance, carrying oxygen and power through endless pipes. But inside the dark scrapyards, far from the shining towers, One man was awake. Cale moved quickly, his eyes sharp, his hands filled with stolen tools. He had made his choice. He would fight for Alara's life. No matter the cost, he had no doctor's badge, no license to heal. But he had something else, something far more dangerous. Knowledge. Years ago, Cale had worked on warships during the Great Frontier War. He had repaired engines that were torn apart by plasma fire. He had rebuilt reactors from pieces of scrap. And in secret, he had studied nanotech blueprints, banned by the colony after the war. To most people, these designs were lost, forbidden. But Cale remembered every line, every detail. He believed that with nanotech, Alara could be saved. The scrapyard stretched wide like a graveyard of metal giants, broken hulls, rusted drones, shattered weapons, all thrown away by a colony that no longer wanted to remember war. But for Cale, this was a treasure chest. Every piece of scrap whispered possibilities, every wire, every circuit, every glowing shard of reactor core held hope. His hands moved fast, pulling out pieces, connecting wires, shaping a secret machine. The plan was simple in words, but dangerous in reality. He would create a swarm of tiny machines, nanobots. They would enter Alara's body, find the infection, and burn it away, but nanobots were unstable, unpredictable, and illegal. If the colony discovered what he was building, they would not only destroy his work, they would execute him for breaking the laws of science. Still, Cale did not stop. Fear had no place in his heart, only determination. He worked through the night, sweat running down his face. Each spark lit his eyes with fire. Every sound of clashing metal reminded him that time was short. Alara's heartbeat could stop any moment. She did not have days. She had hours, and Cale had to be faster than death itself. As he worked, memories came back to him. He remembered another face, years ago, a woman he had loved during the war. She too had been infected by the alien plague. Back then, Cale was powerless, forced to watch as doctors gave up on her. He remembered holding her hand as the light faded from her eyes. The helplessness, the pain, the burning anger. It never left him. This time, he swore it would be different. This time, he would fight. He would not let Alara meet the same fate. The machine began to take shape. It looked like a broken reactor core, glowing faint blue. Wires ran from it like veins, connecting to small capsules filled with liquid metal. Inside the capsules, tiny sparks danced, the first seeds of nanobots. Cale's hands trembled as he connected the last circuit. If this worked, Alara might live. If it failed, she might die faster than before. And yet, he had no other choice. Hope was a fragile light, but it was the only light he had left. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps echoed in the scrapyard, heavy and sharp. Cale froze, his tool still in hand. From the shadows stepped two colony guards, their armor glowing faint green under the night lamps. "What are you doing here, engineer?" one demanded. Cale quickly covered the glowing core with a sheet of metal, hiding the light. "Just collecting scrap for repairs," he answered, his voice calm though his heart pounded. The guards narrowed their eyes. "This section is restricted. Nothing useful left here," they said. Cale forced a smile. "Then I suppose I'm wasting my time," he replied. The guards stared for a moment, then turned away, their boots fading into the distance. Only when the silence returned did Cale breathe again. One mistake, one wrong move, and everything would be lost. Hours passed like seconds. Finally, the machine was ready. Cale lifted the small capsule, filled with glowing liquid, the swarm of nanobots. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat in his hands. He stared at it with a mix of fear and hope. "This will save her," he whispered. "It must save her." With the capsule hidden inside his jacket, Cale left the scrapyard. He walked the silent tunnels, slipping past cameras and patrols. Every shadow felt dangerous, every sound felt like a trap, but nothing could stop him now. At last he reached the hospital again. The corridors were empty, The doctors long gone, only the machines still stood watch over Ilara's fading body. Her chest rose and fell weakly, each breath a struggle, her skin pale, her pulse shallow. She was close to death, closer than ever before. Cale stepped inside, placing the capsule beside her bed. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her. "Everyone left you, but I will not," he whispered. He touched her hand gently, feeling the coldness of her skin. Then he looked at the capsule, glowing, like captured starlight. He knew this was the moment. There would be no turning back. No second chance. If the nanobots worked, Ilara would live. If they failed, she would die tonight. Cale took a deep breath, his eyes burning with fire. "This is not the end," he said. And with steady hands, he prepared to release the swarm into her body. The doctors had abandoned her. The colony had signed her death. But Cale had a plan. A dangerous, forbidden plan. And soon, the universe would know if one man's hope could defeat death itself. The hospital room was silent except for the faint hum of machines, their lights flickering like tired stars. Kyle stood beside Ilara's bed, his hands shaking as he held the capsule of glowing nanobots. She looked so fragile, her breath shallow, her skin pale as snow. He knew that every second mattered, her heartbeat slowing, slipping closer to nothing. If he hesitated, she would be gone before dawn. Cale placed the capsule into a small injector, his fingers moving quickly but carefully. He connected wires from the injector to the machine he had built in the scrapyard. The machine gave a low rumble, its lights flashing weakly as if alive. Cale whispered to himself, "Stay with me, Ilara. Don't leave me now." His voice carried both desperation and determination. He remembered losing someone before, a woman he loved long ago. He would not repeat that pain, not again. When the injector clicked into place, Kyle pressed the button. The capsule broke open, releasing a stream of silver liquid that shimmered like living metal. It moved through the tubes, glowing as it entered Ilara's veins. Her body twitched, her eyes fluttering for a moment before closing again. Cale held his breath, watching every detail. The nanobots were inside her now, millions of them racing through her blood, searching for the alien infection. At first, nothing happened. Her monitors continued to beep slowly, her pulse weak and fading. Cale's heart sank, fear gripping his chest. Had he failed? Had he only brought her a faster death? Sweat dripped from his forehead as he stared at the screens. The machine beside her flickered with strange patterns, readings that no doctor would understand, but Kyle was no ordinary doctor. He saw the numbers, the signals, the strange shifting energy, and realized the nanobots were fighting inside her body. A war had begun. The infection was dark, aggressive, spreading like wildfire through her cells. The nanobots swarmed like tiny soldiers, burning and cutting, breaking apart the alien corruption. But the infection was stronger than Cale imagined. Every second was a battle. Ilara's body shook, her breath uneven. Her skin glowed faintly under the machines as if the war inside was leaking through her veins. Kyle leaned closer, whispering, "Fight, Ilara. Fight with me." Hours passed like years. Kyle never moved from her side. His eyes never left the monitors, his hands adjusting wires, boosting power, pushing the machine harder. The hospital lights dimmed as the reactor inside his device pulled energy from the colony's grid. If anyone noticed, they would come running. But Cale did not care. He was racing against time itself. He knew that if the infection won, she would be gone forever. Her heart monitor dipped dangerously low, the line flattening for a second before bouncing weakly. Cale panicked, adjusting the flow. No, stay with me," he cried softly. His mind flashed with memories of the war again, of the time he had lost someone because he couldn't act fast enough. This time he had acted. This time he had a plan. But what if even this was not enough? What if fate was stronger than him? Then something changed. The readings on the machine spiked, strange waves of energy pulsing across the screen. Ilara's body jerked, her fingers twitching. For the first time in hours, color returned faintly to her cheeks. Kale's eyes widened. "It's working," he whispered. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope. The nanobots were pushing back the infection, driving it out piece by piece. But the battle was far from over. The infection adapted, growing new patterns, spreading in different directions. The nanobots adjusted, splitting into new formations. Their fight inside her body was like a storm, unpredictable and violent. Ilara gasped suddenly, her back arching, her eyes glowing faintly blue. Kyle froze, staring at her in shock. That glow was not human, not natural. It was something new, something created by the fusion of the infection and the machines. Kyle's heart raced faster. Was this saving her, or changing her into something else? He looked at her face, peaceful yet glowing faintly with an unnatural light. He could not stop now, not when she had a chance. The machine whined louder, straining as power surged through its circuits. Sparks flew, smoke rose from its core. Kale slammed his hand against the panel, keeping it alive. "Hold together, just a little longer," he begged. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, the alarm stopped. The monitors stabilized. Her pulse grew stronger, steady. Her chest rose and fell with deeper breaths. Kale collapsed into the chair beside her, exhausted, his body trembling, his hands blackened with grease and burns from the sparking machine. But none of that mattered. He had done it. She was alive. Yet as he leaned closer to her, he saw her eyes open slowly. Her gaze met his, and for a moment relief washed over him. But then he froze. Her eyes were no longer the same soft brown he remembered. They glowed faintly with a metallic blue, shining in the dim hospital light. Kale's breath caught in his throat. She whispered weakly, her voice both human and strange. "Kale." His heart pounded as fear and wonder mixed inside him. The nanobots had saved her, but they had also changed her. He had wanted to fight death, but perhaps he had awakened something entirely new, something beyond human. And deep inside, Kale knew this was only the beginning of a much greater battle. The hospital room was quiet, but the silence felt heavy. Kale sat at Ilara's side, watching her chest rise and fall with steady rhythm. The infection was gone. The nanobots had done their work, yet Kale's heart was not at ease. He could not ignore what he had seen. The glow in her eyes, the strange energy that had passed through her body. It was more than survival. It was transformation. Ilara stirred, her eyelids trembling before opening fully. Her gaze was sharp, too sharp. Her eyes glowed with that strange metallic blue, reflecting the light like polished crystal. Kale leaned closer, his voice gentle. "You're alive, Ilara." She blinked, her lips moving slowly. "Alive," she whispered. Her voice was still hers, yet carried a faint echo, as though two voices spoke together. Kyle shivered. The woman before him was no longer only human. As she tried to sit up, the monitors around her sparked. Lights flickered, machines stuttered as though her very presence disturbed their circuits. Kale quickly held her shoulder. "Easy, you've been through too much." But Ilara shook her head. Her strength returned too quickly, unnaturally. She looked at her hand, flexing her fingers. A soft hum filled the air, and the monitor beside her powered down on its own. She gasped. I can feel it." Kyle frowned. "Feel what?" She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. "The machines, their voices, their signals, I hear them like whispers." She pressed her hand on the bed's frame, and the rusted metal straightened as if newly forged. Kale's breath caught. She was not just healed. She was changed. "The nanobots," he whispered. "They rebuilt you, but they gave you more." Fear flickered in Ilara's expression. "Am I still me?" she asked softly. Kale wanted to answer quickly, to say yes, but deep inside he wasn't sure. She was Ilara, yet something beyond human now. "You are you," he said firmly, "and that is enough." But even as he spoke, he wondered if it was true. The door outside creaked. Kale stiffened, Colony guards moved in the corridor, their boots clanging against the floor. The doctors had reported her as dead, but someone must have noticed the power surge when Kale's machine drained the grid. The colony leaders would want answers. If they discovered Ilara alive and changed, they would call her a danger. Kale whispered quickly, "We need to leave. Now." Ilara looked confused, her body still trembling as she adjusted to her new senses. "Why leave? I'm alive." Kale's face hardened. "Because they will not see you as alive. They will see you as a threat." His words proved true as the door burst open. Guards stormed in, their rifles glowing with plasma charge. The lead officer froze when he saw Ilara sitting upright, alive and glowing. "Impossible," he muttered. She was declared dead. Before Kale could react, one guard raised his weapon. Aiming at Ilara, she flinched, instinct rising before thought. Her hand lifted, and without touching the rifle, its circuits sparked violently. The weapon flew from the guard's hands, crashing against the wall. The guard stumbled back in shock. Kale's eyes widened. Ilara's breath shook. I didn't mean to." The officer's expression turned from fear to rage. "Abomination!" he shouted. "She is no longer human." The guards aimed again, but Kale pulled Ilara close, dragging her toward the emergency exit. "Run," he hissed. Alarms screamed through the hospital as red lights flashed. The colony had been alerted. They fled through narrow corridors, Ilara's senses overwhelming her. She heard the hum of every light, the thrum of every engine. Even the doors seemed to respond when she touched them, opening before Kale could hack their locks. Kale realized she was connecting with the colony's systems without effort. "You're controlling them," he said in awe. Ilara's voice trembled. "I don't control them. They listen to me." Outside, the night sky stretched wide, the stars sharp and cold. The colony towers glowed with warning lights, sirens echoing. Kale and Ilara slipped into the tunnels that led to the scrapyards, their breaths heavy, their hearts racing. For a moment they paused, hidden in shadows. Kale looked at her. "They will not stop hunting you, Ilara. They fear what you've become." Ilara touched her chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. "I didn't ask for this, Kale. I only wanted to live." Her voice cracked, tears shimmering in her glowing eyes. Kale held her shoulders firmly. "And you will live. You are not a curse, Ilara. You are hope. They abandoned you, but I will not." His words were strong, but his heart carried doubt. If she grew stronger, if the changes deepened, would she remain human? In the distance, engines roared. Colony. Drones lifted into the night sky, scanning the streets, searching. Kale tightened his grip on her hand. "We must keep moving before they find us." Ilara nodded, though fear lingered in her gaze. As they disappeared into the darkness, whispers spread through the colony. Rumors of a girl who had returned from death, a patient abandoned yet alive again. Some called her a miracle, others a monster. The leaders prepared their hunters, determined to erase what they could not understand. And Ilara, her body alive with strange new energy, realized a truth she could not deny. She was no longer just human. She was something more, something powerful. And while Kale saw her as hope, the colony would see her as danger. The awakening had begun, and it would change the fate of them all. The night sky over the colony burned with red lights. Sirens howled through every street. The leaders had declared an emergency. Soldiers poured from their barracks. Drones filled the air, and the people watched in confusion. Whispers spread like fire. The girl who was supposed to be dead had risen. Some whispered she was a miracle. Others muttered the word monster. Deep in the shadow of the scrapyard tunnels, Kyle led Ilara through twisting paths, his breath heavy, his mind racing. He had seen the way her powers grew. Machines bent to her will without her asking. Lights flickered when she passed. Doors opened without codes. Even drones seemed to hesitate in her presence. He knew the leaders would never forgive this. To them, she was proof of dangerous science. Proof that man and machine should never mix. Ilara clutched her chest as if trying to hold herself together. Her glowing eyes dimmed with fear. Why are they chasing me, Kyle? I didn't choose this. Her voice trembled. Kyle stopped for a moment, holding her shoulders. Because they fear what they don't understand, because they gave up on you, and your very existence proves them wrong. His words were steady, but he knew the truth. Fear could make people crueler than any enemy. Above them, drones whirred, scanning the ground with bright beams. Kale pulled Ilara into the shadows, pressing his hand over her mouth as the searchlight passed. They stayed silent until the hum faded. Ilara's breathing shook against his palm. Kale released her gently, whispering, "They will never stop. We must keep moving, but we need a plan." The colony leaders gathered in their command chamber. The chief commander stood tall, his voice cold. "The infection girl must be destroyed," he declared. "If she lives, she will infect our world. She is no longer one of us." His words echoed across the comms. Soldiers nodded, but deep in their hearts, doubt grew. They had heard rumors, some saying the girl had healed, some saying she had harmed no one. Still, orders were orders and plasma rifles were loaded. Back in the tunnels, Kale searched through crates of old war scrap. He pulled out an old cloaking shield, dented and cracked but still functional. He wrapped it around Ilara. "This will hide you from scanners for a short time," he explained. "But once it fails, they'll find us again." Ilara touched the shield fabric, feeling its hum. "How long do we run, Kyle? How long before they catch me?" Kale looked into her glowing eyes. "As long as it takes, until I find a way to prove to them that you're not a monster." They moved quietly through abandoned maintenance tunnels, but soon the sound of boots echoed behind them. Soldiers had entered the tunnels, their voices sharp. "She's close, don't let her escape." Kale and Ilara ran, their footsteps echoing on the metal floor. The shield flickered, struggling to stay active. Kale cursed under his breath. Ilara stumbled, her strength faltering. Kale caught her, pulling her back up. "Stay with me," he urged. Her eyes glowed brighter, her fear mixing with something else. Machines around them shivered, pipes rattled, sparks flew from the walls. The soldiers shouted, "She's here!" They opened fire, plasma bolts slamming into the tunnel walls. The blast shook the ground, dust filling the air. In panic, Ilara raised her hand and the lights above exploded, plunging the tunnel into darkness. The soldiers hesitated, their visors flickering. In that moment, Kyle pulled her into a side passage. They crawled through tight vents, the sound of soldiers chasing close behind. Ilara's tears streaked her. "Forciendo, I don't want to hurt them," she whispered. Kyle's voice was firm. "Then don't. But you must survive, Ilara. You must survive." They emerged into a forgotten chamber, filled with broken drones and rusting weapons. Kale quickly barricaded the door, but he knew it wouldn't hold. Ilara sat on the floor, trembling. Her hands glowed faintly, and the broken drones around her twitched, rising slightly off the ground. Kale stared in awe. "You're controlling them." Ilara shook her head. "Not controlling. They are listening to me." The door burst open. Soldiers stormed inside, rifles raised. Kale stood in front of Ilara, ready to fight, though he had nothing but scrap metal in his hand. But before the soldiers could fire, the broken drones rose. Fully, their eyes glowing blue, they moved between Ilara and the soldiers, shields forming, weapons arming themselves despite being dead for years. The soldiers froze, fear gripping them. Ilara stood, her tears glowing in her strange eyes. "Please, I don't want to fight you," she said. Her voice carried through the chamber, soft yet commanding. The drones echoed her words, repeating them in mechanical tones. The soldiers lowered their rifles, uncertain. The leader barked an order, "Shoot her!" But the soldiers hesitated, looking at each other, doubt heavy in their eyes. Kale's heart pounded. He saw it. The fear, yes, but also the hesitation. The people were beginning to see not a monster, but something else, something they could not name yet. The commander shouted again, but his men no longer obeyed as quickly. Ilara's voice broke the silence once more. "I only wanted to live. Why do you hate me for surviving?" The soldiers did not answer. Their silence was the loudest answer of all. But Kale knew this peace could not last. The leaders would send more, bigger forces. They would never rest until she was destroyed. He grabbed her hand, whispering urgently, "We can't stay here. We must leave the colony before they bring war down upon you." Ilara looked back at the soldiers, some lowering their weapons, some still trembling. Her voice cracked. "They are my people, Kale. Why do they want me dead?" Kale's eyes hardened, because sometimes fear is stronger than truth. Outside, the colony's warships prepared for launch. Their engines roared, their weapons charged. The leaders would not let a single girl defy their control. And as Kale and Ilara fled deeper into the night, both of them knew the hunt had only begun. The colony's skies trembled as warships lifted from their hangars. Engines thundered, glowing trails cutting through the night like falling stars. Each ship was armed with plasma cannons and heavy shields. Their orders were simple: find Ilara, destroy her, and silence the hope she represented. On the ground, people watched in fear and confusion. Some whispered prayers for the girl, others repeated the leader's words that she was a monster, Kyle. And Ilara reached the old hangar at the edge of the scrapyard. It was filled with broken starfighters and forgotten cargo ships. Kale's eyes scanned the wreckage quickly. "We need a ship, something that can fly," he muttered. Ilara's gaze moved across the dark hangar, and suddenly one of the ships hummed. Its lights flickered on as if responding to her presence. Kale froze. "Did you just—" She nodded nervously. "It listens to me." They climbed aboard the old craft, its hull dented, its wings cracked. Kale worked fast, pulling wires, restarting the engines. The ship groaned like a dying beast. But with Ilara's touch, the circuits glowed. The engines roared to life, dust and rust shaking off its frame. Kale grinned for the first time in days. "You're not only alive, Ilara, you're keeping this ship alive too." She gave a weak smile, but her eyes burned with fear. "If I can do this, what else am I becoming?" Before Kale could answer, the hangar doors shook. A spotlight cut through the cracks. Soldiers shouted outside, "She's here, launch the ships." Kale pulled the controls, and the craft rose unsteadily into the sky. Alarms blared as the colony's fleet locked onto them. "Target in sight," a commander's voice rang over the comms. "Destroy immediately." The first plasma bolts streaked through the sky, glowing like comets. Kale jerked the controls, the small ship twisting wildly. Ilara gasped, clutching the seat. The bolts missed, exploding against the mountains below. Kale's voice was tight. "We can't outrun them. They're too many." Ilara closed her eyes, feeling the ship's heart beat like her own. Then, "Let me try." She reached forward, her hands pressing against the console. A hum filled the cockpit. Lights danced across the screens. Outside, the old ship moved smoother, faster, as though guided by unseen hands. Kyle looked at her in awe. "You're flying it," she nodded, sweat dripping down her face. "Not flying, becoming part of it." The enemy fleet closed in, dozens of ships surrounding them like predators circling prey. Plasma cannons fired again, beams of deadly light streaking across the darkness. Ilara's eyes glowed, her voice calm though her body trembled. "Bend," she whispered, and the ship bent, twisting in impossible ways, sliding between blasts. Kale's mouth fell open. "You shouldn't be able to do that," Ilara whispered back. "Neither should I be alive." But the enemy pressed harder. Fighters darted around them, larger warships closing their formation. Kale fired back with the ship's old cannons, but the shots were weak, bouncing harmlessly against enemy shields. "We can't win this fight," he muttered. Ilara shook her head, her eyes glowing brighter. "Then I will make them fight each other." Her voice echoed through the cockpit as her mind reached outward. She felt the hum of enemy ships, the rhythm of their engines, the pulse of their weapons. One by one, she touched them, not with hands, but with thought. A fighter's controls jammed, spinning it into its own fleet. Another ship's cannon fired too early, striking its ally. The sky lit with sudden chaos as the fleet turned against itself. Commanders shouted in confusion, "What's happening? Stop firing on each other." But Ilara's power spread like fire. Kale's heart pounded. "Ilara, you're controlling their ships." She shook her head, her voice soft but firm. I'm not controlling. I'm showing them the truth of what they already fear. Kale stared at her, both proud and terrified. The girl he had saved was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. The colony's flagship loomed ahead, massive and unshaken, its cannons locked onto Alara's small craft. The commander's voice roared through the comms. End this now, fire all weapons. Dozens of plasma beams charged, ready to erase them. Kale's hands tightened on the controls. We can't dodge this. Alara's breath came quick. Then we must change the rules. She pressed both hands against the console, her body glowing as energy surged through her veins. The old ship's systems screamed, lights exploding, circuits burning, but the ship did not collapse. It transformed. Metal twisted, wings spread, engines roared louder than ever. The craft was no longer old and broken. It was alive. Alive because she willed it to be. The flagship fired, beams of plasma racing toward them. Alara cried out, her voice echoing with something more than human. The small craft's shields flared with brilliant blue, bending the beams away. The flagship trembled as its own power turned back, explosions ripping across its hull. The sky lit up with fire as the commander's ship burned. Soldiers across the fleet stared in shock, some frozen, some lowering their weapons. Kale could barely breathe. His eyes locked on Alara, her glow dimmed, her body shaking from the strain. He caught her before she collapsed, whispering, You did it. You turned the tide. Her lips trembled. I don't want to be a weapon, Kale, I just want to live. Kale held her tightly. Then we will find a way, I promise you. But even as the flagship burned, Kale knew the war was far from over. The leaders would never forgive this defeat. They would return with more power, more lies, and soon Alara's fight would no longer be about survival. It would be about the future of all humanity. The sky above the colony still glowed with fire. The wreckage of the flagship drifted like burning stars. The people stood in silence, staring at the impossible. A dying girl brought back to life had turned the greatest warship into ashes. Some whispered that she was an angel. Others shouted that she was a curse. The leaders did not hesitate. Their voices thundered across the comms. She is not human. She is a danger to us all. Destroy her before she destroys everything. Kale guided the battered ship into the shadows of the mountains. The engines coughed, sparks flying from cracked panels. Alara lay weak in her seat, her eyes still glowing faintly. Her strength was nearly gone, yet her presence filled the cabin with something unshakable. Kale held her hand, whispering, You're alive. That's what matters. We'll hide. We'll find somewhere safe. But Alara shook her head slowly, her voice trembling but clear. No, Kale, there is no hiding. They will never stop. Not until I face them. Her words struck him like a blade. He wanted to protest, to keep her safe. But he saw the truth in her eyes. She was no longer just fighting to survive. She was carrying the weight of something greater. If I run forever, they will hunt me forever, she said softly. But if I stand, maybe the people will see me not as a monster, but as hope. Kale's chest ached with fear, yet he nodded. Then we stand together. The next day, the leaders gathered their forces in the colony's central square. Giant screens broadcast their message. Soldiers lined the streets. Drones hovered above the crowd. The commander's voice was sharp. We face a threat unlike any before, a girl infected with forbidden machines. She is not one of us. She must be destroyed for the safety of our future. Fear rippled through the people, but doubt lingered too. They had seen her survive. They had seen her defend herself. They had seen ships turn against each other without her lifting a weapon. Then, a hum filled the air. The crowd turned as Kale and Alara stepped onto the square. Soldiers raised their rifles instantly. But Alara lifted her hand, not in attack, but in peace. The weapon sparked, not destroyed, but silenced. The soldiers froze, unable to fire. Her voice carried across the colony, soft, yet powerful. I was left to die, abandoned by the very people sworn to protect life. But one man refused to give up on me, and because of him I am here. Her words echoed, her glowing eyes shining with sorrow and strength. I am still human. I still feel fear. I still feel pain. I still dream. But I am also something new. And I will not use this gift to destroy you. I will use it to protect you, to show you that hope is stronger than fear. The people listened, silence stretching across the square. The commander shouted in rage, "Do not listen to her lies. She is a weapon, nothing more." He raised his arm to order the attack, but something unexpected happened. The soldiers hesitated. Their rifles shook in their hands. They looked at Alara, at her trembling body, at her glowing tears, and one by one, they lowered their weapons. The commander's face twisted with fury. He turned to the drones above, ordering them to fire. But the drones did not obey. Their circuits hummed in harmony with Alara's heartbeat. Slowly, they descended, surrounding her not as hunters, but as guardians. The crowd gasped. Some began to cheer, others to cry. A single voice shouted, "She is not a monster, she is hope." Soon the chant grew louder, echoing through the square. Hope, hope, hope. The commander drew his own weapon, aiming at her in desperation. But before he could fire, Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Alara and the gun. His eyes burned with fire. If she dies, then so does humanity's chance to rise above fear. The crowd surged, people rushing forward. Soldiers who once obeyed orders now stood beside Alara, shields raised against their own commander. The commander's shot never came. His own men restrained him, pulling him back. The leaders' voices fell silent as the crowd roared with unity. Alara stood tall despite her weakness, her voice trembling yet unbreakable. "They left me to die, but I lived. Not because of power, not because of machines, but because of one human who chose hope instead of surrender. If we choose hope together, then no one will ever be left behind again." Tears streamed down Kale's face as he looked at her. The girl he had refused to abandon had become something greater than either of them imagined. She was no longer just Alara the patient, nor Alara the survivor. She was Alara the symbol, a bridge between fear and courage, between despair and hope. The colony shifted that day. The people no longer saw a monster. They saw a light, fragile yet fierce. And though battles would come, though fear would rise again, they would remember this moment. The day a girl abandoned by doctors became the future of humanity. Kale stood at her side, his hand in hers. He whispered, "You've changed everything." Alara looked at the crowd, her glowing eyes filled with both sorrow and love. "No, Kale," she whispered back. "We changed everything." And above them the sky cleared, the stars shining brighter than before, not as distant watchers, but as witnesses to hope reborn.